Good morning and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for July 17th. I'm going to call our meeting to order and see if there are any declarations of conflict. I'm not seeing any. Before we approve our agenda, I'd like to ask permission to move F, which is the Habitat for Humanity presentation, up to B. And then we'll just follow below. Can I have someone approve that change in the agenda for today? Moved, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Okay, so I need to have someone adopt our minutes attached from June the 12th, moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Thank you. Any business arising from those previous minutes?
Page 4, capital projects update. Scott, I keep bringing up this timeline. You're supposed to get me a timeline, an update for the phase 1. Do you have one for phase 2 yet?
Yep, my apologies. So we got everything late last week, and we've just had some vacations and other folks off on vacation and other matters. So we're working on getting the draft out, and we'll share that with everyone once we get drafted.
Phase 1, I mentioned this at the last meeting. June 27 for phase 1 landscaping. So they've completed that?
So again, as we talked, I will take out all that under advisement and explain that in the email to Evolve Council.
Yeah.
The reason why they're not done that work, there have been a number of change orders that that we have to do work ahead of time, so that delays that completion date. So we'll explain all that in an email and we'll share with all council.
So you'll be giving us a timeline?
That there will be a new
both phase
timeline.
1,
That's
phase
correct.
2?
Yep, that's correct.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move right into the reports and discussions. We're going to start with A, which are the 2024-2025 Police Interceptor SUV and all-wheel drives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, this was referred, I think, at last committee meeting. We'll invite both Steve and Brad to come to the mic and explain some of the reasons on why we are making a recommendation of buying. Originally, it was for 8 Ford Explorers. I guess it was the original request. Since then, we've had our director, Dan Jenkins, had reached out and discussed this matter with both of the dealerships, both Ford and Dodge. And I think everyone's in agreement or come to consensus that maybe it's best to do 4 Ford Explorers and 4 Dodge Durangos for this work. Where, yes, the Ford Explorers are slightly more expensive, there is still a cost savings to the city, as a lot of this equipment has already is coming off old trucks and being put onto new vehicles, or it's already been ordered. But I can let Steve and Brad explain that more in more detail if there's further questions.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the committee on these tenders that are going out?
Yeah, there's lots of questions. Yeah, so let's go to page 7. So we went to tender, Scott. History, Scott, can you just explain the history? Like, I think we already went to tender on this. It was for 8 hybrids. Ford Explorer couldn't come back with the 8 hybrids. So then you were asked to go to tender again on it. Can you explain that?
That's correct. So what ended up happening, yes, we went to tender twice for this. The first time we went out to tender, we were looking for, I believe it was a hybrid vehicle. At the time, Ford was a successful bidder. Purchase order was issued. However, later on after the award, it was found out that they were not able to supply these vehicles until sometime in 2025. So both the police department and our team here at Public Works had discussions, said, those vehicles need to be replaced sooner than that. So because we went from a hybrid to a standard gasoline-powered vehicle, that changes the parameters of the tender document, and so that way it made more sense from a public perception or from a public tendering process to issue a new tender that states is for a gasoline-powered vehicle, and so that's where we're here now with the two or this report.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, so it's in our procurement policy, because we don't have a bylaw yet. You're telling me it's in the policy that if tender went out, they couldn't meet the tender, but the successful vendor, in this case Fairwell Ford, could meet it by providing not hybrids, but combustible. We had to go back to tender. That's in the policy. Yeah, sure.
Yes, please, pop up, Steve, it'd be
We'll
great,
let-
thank you.
Yeah, Stephen, Fleet Management, answer your question.
Yeah, so what we went to tender for originally was just hybrid, not fuel and hybrid. So Fairall Ford was the only vendor that could provide that. They were awarded the PO. They came back to us in April of 2024, said, we can still provide it, but it's not going to be till probably 2025. We talked, we said, we're in dire need now. Spoke with Dan, because in total it's almost a $500,000 purchase, and we changed the complete specs, and it opens it up to other vendors. It reissued a public tender, so other vendors could bid on it. That's when the two bids came in.
So all I'm trying to find out, Madam Chair, is this in the policy? That if the scope, we're still looking for 8 vehicles, whether they're hybrids or electric or combustible. Is that, is it that specific in the policy?
Yeah,
that-
if you change the specifications enough that it opens it up to other vendors to be able to provide an opportunity to bid, and we would be able to purchase from them, then we have an obligation to go out and.
But, Madam Chair, I don't think that's specifically stated in the policy, because that's why we want to, Councillor Tweel's been asking for 4 years for a procurement bylaw that could, strengthen those parameters. I'm a little concerned that this is, we're working within policy and that this is what the policy states.
That'd be more of a question for finance and fleet.
Yeah, okay. So here's the other issue I have, Madam Chair. So we go to tender, and the lowest tender is Reliable Motors. Did you go out to Reliable or Fairwell Ford to say, look, you guys get 4, and you guys get 4? Who made that deal? Did you make the deal?
No, Dan and Brad went to,
But-
and met with
but
Reliable Motors.
That's, I know Mr. Jenkins understands the tendering process. The tendering process is that you don't go to the 2 bidders. That was happening during the construction of the Confederation Bridge. SCI was doing that. They went to tender, then they'd go to the bidders and say, listen, here's what someone gave us, we want you to counter that. Like, guys, the tendering process is very clear. The low tender here was Reliable. And if we don't like it, then we have to find a way to re-tender. So, did you speak to Reliable and Fairwell Ford to go 4 and 4?
Your worship, through the chair to your worship, you received the email that I sent following our meeting, which explained what the conversation that took place and the outcome, and that Reliable was quite content with the outcome.
Yeah, I didn't read the email. I don't agree with this process. You go with the low bid. That's, yeah, we can't be, then why have a tendering process? No, go ahead, Deb. This sets a precedent for future tenders. That if we don't like the tender, we'll just go back to the 2 or 3 bidders, send the Director of Finance Administration or the Director of Community Services, go make a deal. You can't do that, guys. Well, explain. Explain how you can do that. I just don't think it's in good public policy that we make these kind of deals.
So through the chair to your worship, so to explain the process, Reliable was a low bidder. There were implications in terms of cost for the city that preferred another supplier. It was a situation that required some finesse in terms of explaining the situation to the supplier. And they were understanding of the situation and quite happy to support the city in navigating through. So the supplier who would have been offended was quite supportive, and I think deserves to be commended and supported in the future. But in this case, the The tender process was not ideal in that it didn't factor in the cost differential of the purchased supplies, but that given, I think the best interests of the city were protected, and the supplier seems to be quite satisfied with it, so I don't see an issue.
I think
Madam Chair, I see an issue, if I can just finish. We have a process here. It's a tendering process.
I think that's what we're just going back to, is it really important to fine tune our procurement bylaw that will happen. And we know we've been explained with the, you know, maybe we put the cart before the horse by ordering accessories to go on police vehicles that didn't suit the second part. So when they looked at the whole financial cost, I think that's why we got into the situation that we're into.
Yeah, no, the best interest for the city is to honor the tender system. We have a
So-
tendering system, we have to honor that.
Okay.
Now, if we wanted a specific vehicle that's fitted our specifications, that should have been in the tender. Obviously, it wasn't in the tender because Reliable and Fair Isle Ford knew what the city needed, city police needed. They knew what they got. They knew they had the package in place. Reliable didn't know that because they were just going on the specs for 8 vehicles, and they were low tender. So I will not support this. Either we go back to tender or we give it to Reliable.
Councillor McAleer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to one of the mayor's points, I'm just wondering, in the process, there were 8 hybrids that were originally needed from Ford, and I don't know if our tender policy allows or speaks to, was there a time frame, a lateness? I know there was some urgency to this being filled. It couldn't be filled, so did that in any way play a part in kind of saying the tender, you know, that the tender, the process could be kind of renegotiated or opened again? Was that part of the reasoning or rationale that it could be looked at again?
The only way we could look at purchasing similar type vehicles from that vendor is if they could supply the vehicle that we spec'd. So like, once the spec changed, we're required to retender. It doesn't give us a whole lot of flexibility that way.
So in front of us is the recommendation to support the 4 and 4 to move to council. His worship's indicated that he's not willing to support. Is anybody willing to move this to council?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Twill.
Yeah. I think when you look at what's happened here is that for some reason, we went on the assumption that one particular car dealership was going to win the tender, and all those fixtures that are required for police vehicles were already ordered. Is that safe to say, senior management? That we went under that assumption?
Through the chair to Councillor Twill. So, in fact, the other supplier had won the tender.
No, I'm not talking about whether the other supplier won the tender. I'm talking about before the tender even went out.
Yes.
All those fixtures and amenities were already here,
Yeah.
right?
So
So did we go under the assumption that a particular car dealership was going to win the tender? Did we go under that assumption?
So if Councillor Twill, if you'll allow me to answer the question. So if we go back to the tender for the 8 hybrid SUVs, that tender was won by the Ford dealer. So at that point in time, the tender was awarded to the Ford dealer, and we fully expected that we would receive the 8 Ford hybrid vehicles. So on that basis, knowing that there's a lead time for the equipment to arrive, the fleet manager did what they would normally do, is to order the accessories to match up with the vehicles that they fully expected would arrive based on an open tender process, which had been awarded. What happened was that Ford was unable to deliver those vehicles, and we only learned of that this spring. when we were, hoping to receive those vehicles within a few months. So the Ford accessories were only ordered on the assumption that Ford was able to deliver on the RFP that they had been awarded fair and squarely. At that time, there was one other bidder, but the price differential was quite high, and Reliable didn't, or Chrysler didn't have a hybrid vehicle to offer at that time. So that was why the equipment was ordered. It wasn't because there was an assumption that somebody was going to win a future tender. It was on the knowledge that the tender had been awarded to the Ford supplier, and the equipment was ordered to match up with the vehicles they expected to arrive. So that's an important distinction.
Councillor McLeod.
Again, I just kind of want to try to understand, with our current policy, not a procurement bylaw, but anyway, which is obviously hopefully coming, but with our current policy, the fact that Ford realized they couldn't deliver on the 8 hybrids, couldn't meet the delivery time, did that fact not then open up the possibility of where we are now, that it kind of had to basically go to square one, and we ended up where we are today? Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly why we went to the second tender. There was a request, from the purchasing department. Where do we go with this? Can we just go to, do we wait? Do we purchase?
Yeah, so the question I'm asking is, and I perhaps shouldn't be clear on this myself, sitting in this chair, but does our current policy, does it allow or speak specifically to the point, if there's a timeline or an expectation that can't be met, that it can fall to what's happened here? I'm guessing there's maybe no specific mention of this dynamic in our current policies. I guess my question.
Thanks. Through the chair to Councillor McAleer. Yeah, so our procurement policy is 2 pages, 1 sheet of paper, 2 sides. So this is not contemplated, nor would it typically be in a much more robust policy. There are always situations you run into which, you can't write policy for every possible scenario. So what we did, to His Worship's comment that the most important thing is that the procedure, that the procurement policy is followed, I take issue with that. I would argue that there's probably 2 most important things here. One, that the city gets reasonable value for taxpayers' dollars, and 2, probably most important in this situation, is that the relationship with the suppliers is maintained, and we respect those suppliers, and that's why the chief of police and myself went out to meet with them, and we spent an hour. We had a good meeting. And came up with what we felt was a reasonable solution to a situation which was unusual, because the first situation, the first tender couldn't be fulfilled because the manufacturer, Ford Canada, just didn't have the engines to put in the unit. So you can't write law or policy to suit every situation, and this was an unusual one, but I think we put a lot of effort in to maintain the relationship and to come up with a reasonable solution for the city, and it was well received, and as I mentioned in my email to His Worship, that the McLennan family were quite happy to have their product represented in the fleet, and we're quite satisfied with that. So,
Yeah, again, I go back to the policy.
Just one moment, please.
Sure.
Do you have a question? Your mic's.
Can I just follow up?
Okay,
Can I?
Your Worship?
Yeah, so 2.3 of the policy under scope, and I take exception to what you just said too, that I'm not here for the best interest of the city when it comes to tendering. Tendering to me, and to write a policy for every tendering possibility, that's not how policy is set up. Policy is to govern sort of an umbrella effect for everything that we do. But it says here, this 2.3, section 2, subsection 2.3, the city reserves the right to award bids, quotations, and tenders in the best interest of its taxpayers. Now, there's the key word, reserves the right to award. So to take an award and say, okay, we're going to split it between two suppliers, why didn't we go to the third one? You know, maybe they were high, but maybe we could have got something better there. So guys, you know, we can split this as many ways as we want. The tendering process, and you know that working from municipal affairs, the tendering process is set up that it's a level playing field for all the bidders. Like I come from a family background where we've tendered and lost a tender by $1,000 and it's a $500,000 tender. But hey, we weren't the low bid and we worked within the framework of the tendering process. This is not how, I went through this experience when we were working with SCI during the construction of the bridge. This is not how it works. And to think that one person, the administration, is serving the better interests of the cities than we as elected officials, we all are here as a team. We're all here to work together.
I think with
And
the level
if I can-
playing field.
If I can just finish, Madam Chair, the level playing field is that the policy that we have in place right now, as our director just said, is only 2 pages. We've been asking for the procurement bylaw that would give us, again, we can't make a policy or a bylaw to just address every issue, but when we do put something in place, it covers a wide area. And that's where I am. I'm going back to 2.3. The city reserves the right to award bids, not to make deals, award bids, quotations, and tenders in the best interest of its taxpayers after considering all factors. So
And
some
I
of-
think, Your Worship, what we're forgetting is that extra piece where they put the cart before the horse buying those accessories, but when they added all that money up based on, it was still better for the taxpayers of the city, from what I understand, because they had already ordered the accessory parts for vehicles that they assumed they were going to receive. I'm just wanting to make sure that that point's out there. So when you quote the taxpayers for the best interest of the taxpayers, I think, from my understanding, that's why they came in with this recommendation. Someone
The
can
tendering
confirm.
process is set up, Madam Chair.
I
So
understand.
it provides a level playing
Yep.
field for all bidders. If you start changing the rules,
I think the mistake
let's
was
not
once
have a
they
tendering
ordered the
process.
accessories for a certain vehicle. That's where we probably, go ahead, Stephen.
It's not a mistake ordering the accessories. The vehicles were awarded, and every vehicle since I've been here in 7 years, and if you ask any fleet manager across Canada, they'll tell you the same thing. When you procure any type of fleet chassis or fleet, you order the equipment at the same time because you wait for it if you don't.
Well, then maybe we need to have it, once those are ordered and it's only going to suit certain vehicles in our procurement bylaw, do we have to go back to tender? I don't know. Councillor Tweel, or do you have something you want to add before Councillor Tweel asks the question?
Yeah, and you know, clearly this tender, this RFP, the second one, you know, wasn't perfect, and that's something that we discussed with Reliable, that we fully recognize that we didn't have all the facts articulated in the tender document, that there was a price disadvantage if we didn't end up with the Fords, and that was on us, but we owned that mistake, and that was part of the conversation we had with the supplier, that you know if in fact that they felt strongly that they won the tender, that we would have to go that way, but they too are taxpayers in Charlottetown. And they understand that there are situations that require some additional consideration, and as business people, they and good corporate citizens and good citizens of the city, we're quite happy to work with us. So that's the proposal that we come back with, and ultimately, council has the decision to make as to which way to proceed. The other factor that we, there were operational concerns that we had from expressed by the chief, that we want to try to have some consistency in the fleet, and they recognize that. But we're hoping to work with them down the road, and they supply other vehicles besides just patrol vehicles. So we'll continue to work with them in the future.
Can I ask the accessories, and I'll let you speak here second, Brad, but can the accessories be returned? Could we return them and just go with our standard low tender bid?
Yeah, that was one question that I asked, Chair. The unfortunate part is because of the long lead time with this tender is that the materials had been on the floor for over a year, and they're just not returnable. We will still end up with some extra accessories beyond what we can use once this order is filled, if the recommendation is passed through council. And the hope is that we might be able to resell those or just hold them in inventory for future purchases if we end up with additional Ford units. So I think there's probably another accessories for another couple of units that if we can't resell them or return them, but that was explored.
Okay, Brad, did you have something you wanted to say?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for letting me come to your meeting today. It's an important discussion. I can certainly say that I am thankful for the work that our fleet manager and public works department and this. You can understand that these are vehicles from last year's budget, and so as we move forward, there was a lot of things that are kind of anomalies in this situation. We wouldn't normally run into. Having inventory. This is some fallout still from COVID. And I was part of the meeting at Reliable, and to Dan's point, it was a very good meeting, a very non-confrontational meeting, a very honest and sincere meeting where we spoke to our realities and acknowledged where we could have did better. And we were well received by Reliable, and I think came to a compromise that was suitable for everyone, and certainly recognize that this isn't perfect. But I can tell you, I just want to leave you with the fact that, a thought that these are emergency vehicles that are much needed within our fleet now. And extending this process any longer can have an impact on public safety. And we know it's not ideal, but certainly, I just want to express the urgency of it. We're patching vehicles together now.
Did you have something else to say,
Yeah.
Councillor Twill?
Couple of things. Danny, have you checked with legal counsel to see what position the city would be if there was a lawsuit filed against the city?
Through the chair to Councillor Twill, I think it's quite clear, and this was something that we discussed openly with the McLennans, is that if they challenged us on this, they would win because they were low tender, and that's why we went to talk to them. We had a face-to-face, honest, open, transparent conversation, accepted the reality of our shortcomings, and attempted to reach a reasonable go-forward plan, which they were accommodating in supporting, I'm not sure. It's one of those situations that if you could have unrung the bell and gone back to square one, we would have done things differently. But things happened, and we dealt with the cards that we had as as best we could, and as open and honestly as we could. And that's the recommendation that's before you folks to consider.
So if we were challenged legally, the city would lose. That's the first question. City would lose. I guess when for you and the chief to go out and meet with Reliable Motors, I can understand it to a certain extent, but I think senior management has to understand before you make these moves, you should come back to the committee. That's why we have a committee. If the committee wants to entertain a strategy or some type of an improvise, you come back to the committee first to see if the committee wants to entertain an initiative of that proportion. So I was taken back that the meeting had taken place. I understand what you were trying to do. But as a member of the standing committee, that should be vetted first with the committee to see, okay, well, what are the options open? To see what we can do. Can we improvise? Is there going to be a lawsuit? Could there be a lawsuit? What position does that put the taxpayers in? All those questions. I think we need to have that dialogue before those discussions take place. To my mind, that was a missing piece.
Yeah.
That was a missing piece. I read the email. Again, I understand what you were trying to do, but it just seems to me, and it seems to be a recurring theme here, is that all these discussions are taking place, and then, we're brought in at the end and say, okay, here it is. Those discussions need to take place with the committee first before we entertain any type of improvisation.
Through the chair, Councilor
Yeah.
Twill. So that is exactly what we're doing here today. So,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Danny. No, hold it. No. No, that's not what I'm saying, Danny. I'm not saying that's why we're here today. What I'm saying is, before you go out and meet with Reliables, I'm saying those discussions need to take place at the committee first to see what type of improvisation the committee would like to entertain. Then senior manager comes out and does its work. Do you know what I'm saying?
if I may respond.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we did. We didn't have anything to bring back to committee before we met with the folks at Reliable. We didn't know where we would end up, other than going out and having a discussion with them, explaining the situation, and trying to brainstorm an improvisation that we could take back to council, committee and council, for consideration. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. So if we had to come back before we met with the supplier, we would really have nothing to talk about. We could say, yes, go and talk to them and see what you can work out, or maybe we just go with the original tender. But you still have, those are all still options to you. This gives you something that you can approve. We have an operational requirement for the vehicles that we want to get vehicles in place so the police can do their job. So we didn't want to come here without any workable, viable solution so that we can get 4 rubber tires underneath our police officers so they can do their job. So we felt that if we came back to council looking for direction, it would really be, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. But no decisions have been made. The deals, there's no deals that have been made. The supplier Reliable knows full well that this has to be approved by council, and that's why we're here to talk about it today. So apologies if you feel that we overstepped our bounds, but we felt we were, fulfilling our responsibilities as administrators to come up with some viable solutions for you to consider, and you ultimately have that choice.
Either way, this has to go to council anyway for final approval, so it's whether or not we're going to accept staff's recommendation, which is to go 4 and 4, or is this committee going against that? So we've been discussing it for like an hour now, and
No, it's
Oh, half
9:30,
hour, yeah.
35. So, Madam Chair, if I can just follow up, Councillor Twill and I don't always agree, but, yeah, I know that. That's nothing new. But the point here is that, just as you said, if you had to come back and said, we're going to go out and meet with the 2 bidders. Did you go to Fair Isle Ford? Can I ask? You didn't go to Fair Isle Ford? So they don't know yet that this is taking place?
No, because they weren't low bidder, so they
Right.
wouldn't be an offended party.
Right.
So whatever they get out of this in terms of an order for vehicles would be above and beyond what they would get out of these.
So if
typical
we were
outcome of the
briefed
RFP.
before you went out and spoke to Reliable, I would have made the same arguments. Can't do it. You cannot do it. 2.3, the city reserves the right to award bids, quotation, and tenders in the best interest of its taxpayers. And to go back to our corporate taxpayers, our corporate citizens, we went through enterprise fleet management. Remember that, Steve? The car dealers come in here, 13 of them, said, we don't like this deal. What was the response from council? Let's drop Enterprise Fleet Management and go with our local dealerships, auto and truck dealerships. So, look, we're all on the same board, but I would have advised senior management or the director of finance administration, you can't make those kind of deals. The only deal that's made is within the tendering process. Low tender or high tender be based on qualifications, but this I cannot agree to.
So
Thank you.
you're recommending we do not support staff's recommendation to approve this?
I am
You're
saying
saying
that I do
no.
not support
Okay, so
staff's recommend. I can't
Is there
speak for the
anybody
committee.
that wants to put it on the floor that we're supporting staff's recommendation? Okay, does anyone second John's motion to support staff's recommendation? To get it to council?
Yeah, just before I do that, I do have a follow-up question with the chief. You mentioned timelines, you need the vehicles right away. In terms of urgency, outline that time frame in terms of months. Like, where are we at with the other vehicles that need to be turned in compared with the new ones that are coming in?
Sorry. Chair, Councilor Twill, you know, I'm not going to be able to give you a vehicle by vehicle breakdown, but I can tell you we are 2 years behind in replacement of our vehicles. Emergency vehicles that go on the road 24 hours, 7 days a week and need to be dependable. The vehicles to be replaced have become maintenance burdens and are racking up maintenance costs. You know, so certainly they're beyond their normal life cycle and should have, and by normal standards, would have been replaced a year ago. So I guess we're a year behind the cycle of replacement that would be a standard time frame. So we've been trying to maintain these vehicles, doing our best, salvaging parts off of old vehicles. But you know, the need for these vehicles is now, and of course, you know, there's obviously you know, the implications of public safety. Like, our emergency vehicles need to be dependable and reliable. With emergency calls for service, there should be no question whether that vehicle is going to be serviceable for the officers. And we're in that period where we don't have that confidence.
Just wanted to add to the chief's comment there. If we ordered these vehicles tomorrow, they wouldn't arrive next week. These are months out, so it's not just getting the order in, it's getting in the queue of production. So there is a time factor here.
All right, I'll second the motion.
So Councillor McAleer's put it on, Councillor Twill seconded, all those in favor of moving this?
Resolution's on the floor. We can speak to the resolution, Madam Chair. So again, I just want to clarify something. We are all agreeing that the low bid from reliable motors have dependable and reliable vehicles. Correct? We're agreeing to that, are we not? Yeah, so I just want to make that clear that the dependability and the reliability, whether it's a Dodge or a Ford, or it's any other make within the sphere of what we need for emergency vehicles, meets our demands and meets our prerequisites. I just want to make it clear, I do not support this resolution because there's a tendering process that's been in place under this policy. It'll be hopefully more stringent and more clear, much clearer on how we go forward with the procurement bylaw. So I will be voting against it.
And I have one clarification before we go to vote. Can the accessories for the Dodge, it's Dodge? Is it Dodge that you said reliable? Can they be ordered in reasonable time as well to get these cars? It'd be the same thing because you'd need accessories ordered for them anyway. Is that correct?
I can offer a comment on that. During our discussion with Reliable, they did indicate that they may be able to supply some of the accessories through the production process. So I think that's something that we would explore once we have approval to proceed, that Stephen would undertake to work out those details. But yes, they would have to be ordered.
So if council goes with the process, which his worship's indicating, which is correct in my view as well, these cars and accessories could be in if we go with Reliable, who were the low tender. And we'd be out the money for the accessories for the Ford, basically. That would be the only difference, correct?
Not the only difference. Certainly, I just want to shed some light on why the city has made a commitment to work towards net zero. Police department is part of the city corporation. Certainly wanted to assist in that goal, and we want it to be a full fleet of hybrid vehicles to help achieve that. And when you go down that pathway, there's very few vendors that offer that. And in fact, Ford was the only one, and I think still is currently the only one to offer police package hybrid vehicles. So once you're in that vehicle, other things come from it. So the vehicle is outfitted with a number of operational equipment, including emergency equipment, including carbine mounts, shotgun mounts, officer safety devices that need and by best practice should be in the same place. Because in times of urgency and high pressure situations, muscle memory takes over in the training. So it's very important to have some uniformity in those because we must do our best to set our officers up for success in the most challenging situations. So if there's not clear at this point, if to us and in our conversation with Reliable, if they will be producing a hybrid police package vehicle. So if you were to get all 8 Dodge Durangos, then it might be a one-off if we were to get back to our vision. And so I just wanted to offer those comments and just reiterate that I don't. At the end of the day, I don't think a compromise of 4 and 4 is going to be contentious to any aggrieved parties, other than might be out of alignment with our way the tender was awarded. But this is not a normal situation by any means.
Again, we're a recommending body, so the motion's on the floor, and we're
Second
going.
time to speak. I can speak twice in the
And then,
resolution.
yeah.
Yep. Again, Chief, 2.3, city reserves the right to award bids, quotations, and tenders in the best interest of its taxpayers after considering all factors. The situation that we're into, this could apply that there may not be a reason to go back to tender. We could have just said, go with the higher bid because of the circumstances. That wasn't given to us. You were told by, I believe, the Director of Finance and Administration to go back to tender because the scope of it or the requirements were changed. But again, that no policy, no bylaw is perfect. But if it's made broad enough, just like acts of provincial legislature, the acts of Parliament, they're made broad to cover many areas. Just what you said, there are circumstances where dealers or automakers don't make hybrids. So that, to me, 2.3 gives you some room to play around with it. But you were told to retender. And here we are. We got a low tender from someone that can't supply what you need. Or that's what you're saying, especially when it comes to hybrid vehicles. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so the motion's on the floor to go to council with the recommendation to support staff on their report. Can I have a vote? 2 and 1 against. Okay.
Vote recorded 2-1.
I just said 2 and 1 against. It will be in the minutes. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we're going to move on to our second item. We have agreed in our adoption of the agenda for today. We're going to have a presentation for Habitat for Humanity. So, could bring you girls to the mic. Pam, welcome. Thank you.
We might need a little technical
We changed the agenda. We try to make it comfortable.
There, turns red.
I'm gonna mess up all your systems.
There we go.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation. My name is Pam Scarman Montgomery, and I'm CEO of Habitat for Humanity. I'm going to try to be brief. This presentation, and thank you, Mayor Brown, came from an opportunity we had to present at the Atlantic Mayors Congress. My colleague from Habitat Nova Scotia, Donna Williamson, and I had opportunity to speak to a group of Atlantic mayors and their staff and associates. So had a conversation with Mayor Brown, and pleased to be here today to give you a brief overview on what Habitat PEI does and what we hope to do going forward. And in that conversation, maybe dispel a little bit of the preconceptions people have about Habitat PEI and what we do. Habitat PEI is a not-for-profit organization governed by, click. This is why they don't let me play with the technology. Habitat PEI, as I said, we're a not-for-profit governed by a board of governors with a mission to bring communities together to help families build strength, stability, and independence through affordable home ownership. We have a board of 12 volunteer directors, as you can see on our screen. Currently, our board chair is Mary Lou Bassett. We focus on one particular space in the housing spectrum. Habitat PEI and Habitat for Humanity International and all its associate affiliates only provide affordable home ownership. It's our goal to provide as many opportunities in this space to free up more space on the housing spectrum. The more opportunities that we can provide, the more families...
Just, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. Am I in a conflict of interest? I got a brother and a first cousin on this board.
This just for information.
What?
Yeah.
So I'm in a
Yeah, we had wondered that.
So
I was wondering that too, but never stopped it.
I know.
Never stopped it before.
I know you. What's that? No,
We're just information. If we get opportunity to make a formal ask, we'll hopefully have
okay.
opportunity to present to
All
council as a whole. So again, we provide only opportunities in the affordable homeownership position on the housing spectrum. And we provide those opportunities through two unique mortgage models. Currently, our traditional mortgage model is a zero interest, zero down payment mortgage based on, or payment based on income, not on value of the properties. So our homeowners pay 30% of their gross household income, which includes their mortgage payment and property tax. That's what that 30% goes towards. Currently, we're working on a partnership with Provincial Credit Union for our second mortgage model, which we're calling a commercial lender model. And in this model, it will be an interest-bearing financial instrument where Habitat PEI will build the properties and guarantee the mortgage in its entirety. However, our homeowners will apply for a first position mortgage with Provincial Credit Union for 50% loan to value. So what that does for our homeowners is allows them access to a property for 50% of the loan to value. It provides stability in their mortgage payment, something that I didn't mention in our traditional mortgage payment, or our traditional mortgage model, is that one of the disadvantages to our homeowners, and somewhat to us as an organization, is with our classic Habitat model, that 30% payment, 30% of your gross household income, is assessed annually. So it's a little bit of a disincentive for our homeowners to make more money. And as they do make more money, we take more of their income. So it's a little bit of a balance. So with the commercial lender model, their payment will be fixed for a term. So they'll know what that payment is and provide a little bit longer stability in their budgeting and planning. And it's also a little bit more of a stronger ROI for us as an organization. With our traditional mortgage model, it's a very slow repayment term. And although we are a charitable lender, we're also a very flexible lender, and sometimes that leads to a little bit more of a challenge in financing our builds. What most people know about Habitat is that we build new homes. We work with families who are in need of safe and affordable housing. We utilize volunteers, and volunteerism is a cornerstone of our organization. We have a strong local presence. There are 45 Canadian affiliates. Work with a national entity that we call Habitat Canada. We are also an affiliate of Habitat International. Habitat International is based in Atlanta, Georgia. And Habitat International in the US, they have 1,100 affiliates in the US. And often people recognize or associate Habitat for Humanity builds with President Carter and his wife Rosalind. And that's generally what people know. I've been in this role for 3 years, and what people say to me most often is, "Oh, you guys give away homes." No, we don't. And we don't build them for free. So we do repair and revitalize existing neighborhoods and homes. Our homeowners pay a mortgage geared to income, not towards loan to value. We have both a presence locally, nationally, and globally. Habitat for Humanity International has a presence in 70 countries across the world. Our proceeds from our Restore support our operations and help fund our work. Restore is, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Restore. It's, we retail gently used building supplies and home goods. And part of our mission with Restore is to divert as much product as possible from landfill. And we estimate in the past 2 years, we've diverted millions of pounds from waste through our Restore work. And we also need the support of partners and donors like you, municipalities. Habitat Partnership provides families with the opportunity to invest in themselves. Our mortgages that are geared to income help bridge the income gap and give people who wouldn't necessarily qualify for a traditional mortgage the opportunity to own a home. That monthly payment builds equities, and it's a critical step in the housing continuum. Again, the more opportunity we can provide, the more opportunities along the housing spectrum as a whole. And our builds bring together communities and build more inclusive and diverse community. It's a good investment. For every $1 invested in Habitat, we know that approximately 4 is returned back to community. It provides a pivotal role in your communities, bringing together increased property taxes, local spending, increased civic participation. Our Habitat homeowners are required to provide 500 volunteer hours throughout their home ownership journey. It's a hard stop requirement in our home building program. We know through studies and just surveys of our homeowners and our communities across the country, the more we build, the lower crime rates, improved school performance, and better health outcomes, not only for our families, but for the communities in which we build. Oh, and also increased and improved infrastructure for the communities that we build in. We've been really fortunate over the past couple of years to develop some really strong partnerships with communities across the province. The municipality, the town of Three Rivers, has donated 5 lots on which we're going forward with an MOU that we've written with them to probably build between 8 and 12 properties in the Georgetown neighborhood. The municipality of Elyria has donated a lot. The rural municipality of Tyne Valley, we're working on a land donation with them, on which we'll probably build 4 to 8 townhomes. We're working with an entity called Develop West Prince, in partnership with another affordable rental provider to focus on developing affordable homeownership opportunities and affordable housing in the 4 major communities in West Prince. The town of Alberton and the Provincial Credit Union, we're working with both those organizations on a piece of property that the Provincial Credit Union owns to look at what affordable homeownership would look in that neighborhood. And we're also meeting with the city of Summerside to discuss a large multi-unit build in that community as well. So we're hopeful that the city of Charlottetown has the opportunity in the future to look at its land bank and existing properties, and maybe there's a partnership there that we can develop homeownership opportunities within the city boundaries. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much.
Is that fast enough?
That was very good, and very familiar with the great work you're doing. And I think that was what the mayor was hoping, is maybe that, you know, through this committee, it came through for some opportunity to look at possibilities for land sectors that may be available in the future to work as partner moving forward. So thank you very much for taking the time to come in, and I'm sure there'll be some follow-up work happening at a later time. John, you have a question?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. That's great. Sounds like obviously doing great work. Great service. Just curious, your Restore piece, just wondered roughly what percentage of that revenue makes up your kind of, your
Operating?
whole budget, operating.
As a percentage of our operating, it's probably, I'd say, 40% of our operating budget. Yeah. My math is slow when I haven't had enough coffee.
At least 30.
Yeah, it's over 30, not quite half. How about that? It's huge, yeah. Without Restore, the majority of our donations and what we receive in funding is dedicated to our building program, and we don't receive any core funding from any of our funders or partners for our operations. So our Restore is primarily our operations.
Go ahead, Councilor McLaren.
Just one more. So then on your request to the city in terms of possible land bank, is there, if there's something that can be identified and something that the city and council wanted to bless or endorse, is there a project you have in mind? Would there be a certain scale and size as to what that might look like, given if your wish list could be granted?
I think it's our goal, along with many municipalities, to provide buildings or build form with higher density. We'd had some conversations with previous board chair and some city staff around properties, and I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble saying this out loud or not. No? Okay. On Beach Street, that would lend itself well to a townhouse or condo kind of a building. So we think we could probably do between 4 and 6 units in that area. Mayor Brown had mentioned some other properties on Malpeque Road that perhaps could be repurposed. I'm sure many of you saw the news coverage that we had with the provincial donation of the home on Oakland that we moved out to properties in Harrington. The province had acquired, when they did the roundabout on St. Peter's Road, they acquired a property that needed to be disposed of, so they donated it to us. I do want to say we're incredibly grateful for that donation. However, I would hesitate in that it was kind of the perfect donation in that the province also paid to move it and build it back. So they've put it back on foundation and have made it weather tight. So it was a significant donation from the Department of Transportation in the province of Prince Edward Island. And we were fortunate enough to have land available to accept that donation. So it was kind of the perfect situation. However, we do have the ability through our CMHC funding and with some partnership support to rehab homes. We do have a certain standard of when we rehab homes, there's a standard that we have to meet in order to provide that to our homeowners, and a lot of them are around the efficiency guidelines and National Building Code. So when we accept those types of donations, we do have to look at the cost of rehab versus building new. So there's lots of opportunities in the future.
Sounds like there'll be lots of opportunity for future discussion moving forward for sure, and hopefully some good partnership.
Awesome.
So thank you, Your Worship, for encouraging them to come in today, and thank you very much,
Madam
ladies.
Chair, can I just make a?
Yes.
You don't have a question, Councillor Twill?
There's no. No, and he's not going to. He's going to say thank you, and we're moving.
Pam?
Yeah.
She gave a great presentation, her and Donna Williamson up at Summerside for the Atlantic Mayors Congress.
Thank you.
And no, Philip Brown has made no deal with Pam for other properties around the city. I want to clarify that. But I did highlight that we do have some buildings that we did put up for tender. And if those buildings don't get what we want, respecting the tendering process, there's some options there. And Councillor Twill remembers back in early 2000, the city provided tax incentives for the Habitat for Prince Edward Island homes on Hunter Lane. And I think they went for 10 or 20 years of a tax relief. I think it was a sliding scale. So there's some options there for us. And we do have our asset manager, Madam Chair, Paul Johnson, that could look at just other properties. But this is an idea that's working, has been working for over 50 years. And it's about getting young families, single moms, single dads with kids back on their feet. Could I just ask you to go back to the slide on the funding with how you now look at borrowing from the bank? You had what are you, slide 3 or 4?
We're not the borrower. We're the mortgage holder. So in our commercial lender model, it's a 50% loan to value. So because of how we build, and we're fortunate to have great partnerships with suppliers and contractors, we often build for less than market. So CRA requires that our houses be appraised, and that appraisal price constitutes sale price. So we take that sale price and and with our commercial lender model, that becomes the starting point for everything. So the 50% loan value is based on that purchase price. Traditionally, and well, in all forms, we cash flow our builds. So in order to make that up, given the economy, current housing crisis, it's very difficult to fundraise the full value of a house. So this model allows us to access or leverage financing that we wouldn't have opportunity to do in the past. Although we are the mortgage holder for all our mortgages, they're assets we can't leverage. So this commercial lender model provides us with a mechanism to access some funding for our build program through our homeowners. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The reason I want you to bring this slide up, because first mortgage via traditional lending institution. So if I go through the credit union or BMO, RBC, with my loan,
Yep.
that's what I'm clarifying.
Okay.
You know what, guys? I'm not trying to think
Yeah,
that this isn't important, but it really isn't a Public Works Committee discussion.
No.
So,
I just want to, because this 30% issue is just something I want to clarify, because I'm a little
but Your
confused.
Worship? Okay.
So the two things. So our mortgage payments for our Habitat homeowners are 30% of gross household income or less.
Right.
Okay? The commercial lender model is what our homeowners, what they're beholden to the credit union, or their obligation to the credit union is 50% of the loan to value. So in a $300,000 build, that first mortgage would be for $150,000. So that's the loan that they would pay. And what we've seen in our experience is that loan payment is 30% of gross household income or less.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that because I think it's a great model. And I want to thank the chair and Scott Adams, our engineer, and the director for allowing this to happen, because this is a way to get it in the system and up through to finance and administration to see what we can do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Probably have to report. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming.
Thank
in,
you.
for the great work you're doing. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to go back to our reports, and then under C now is the construction waste disposal. We've already seen this tender. Recommendation, it was deferred, and it's back in front of us again. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think the big concern that came back on why it was deferred was there was some report that the council had received from the individual who had the high bid, McKay Construction. And one of the things, so I guess we should go back. How we set up this tender is we had to pick a point in a map where we say is kind of our start point, and we picked 12 McAleer because that's where our depot is, and it's fairly, central to any potential landfills or dump sites that we want to that we could use. But one of the things that they're trying to say in that report was, all the loads are coming from that from 12 McAleer, which is not correct. We could have a crew working in John's ward, which is closer to Cornwall, which be a few kilometers shorter. So I guess really what we're trying to say is it's really hard to put a cost associated with how much additional cost we would incur for travel. The other thing is sometimes it's a 1-ton truck that's delivering materials. It's not a dump truck. So that's not as increased of a cost because a 1-ton truck uses less fuel. So when we kind of looked at there's a very big difference in price, $100,000 to $47,000. And we could not, yes, there will be an increase in costs in fuel and travel outside the city. It's nowhere near the cost differential between the two sites. And so that's why we're still making our recommendation to award to Landmark Construction for $47,000, just because we will never ever see that cost differential at $50,000 or $53,000.
Scott, one point that was brought up in council prior to the deferral was there was an understanding that there was a potential agreement in place to kind of finish filling this dump site. Are you aware of any agreement where we committed to filling the dump site before we looked for an alternative location?
Great question. So I've never seen anything written. And there may have been a handshake agreement at some point in time, way back in the day when this started, but nothing that I'm aware of from an actual contractual obligation that requires us, that locks us into that one site. I'm not aware of that by any, and nor were we able to locate anything.
So that was looked into. And was there an agreement, a written agreement with this with Bobby McKay's company? Was there anything in writing, or was it just something that we did?
It was something that was an ongoing year to year since I've been here, and long before I was here. This was just the site that was used. It was an underutilized piece of property back in the day, owned by McKay Construction, that they started using as a road material waste site in, I think, the city at the time, because it was available to us. We started dumping there as well. And at a reasonable cost, but the costs have gone up substantially over the past couple of years. And so, as we're trying to look at all our, all that work that we do in and around the city, we're trying to make sure that, once we hit that mark where it's exceeding our allowable amounts before we have to go to tender. That's what we're looking at, and this is one of those ones that we saw that price creeping up. So we want to go to tender. We know there's other disposal sites around the city or around the area of the city within a reasonable travel distance, and so we want to see what was out there. And this is a fair and open and transparent process to see what is out there. And again, we had 3 bidders. One was disqualified, but we ended up with 2 at the end of the day. And we believe it's a fair price for what services that we need.
And this is for 1 year with the option to renew if things are going well. For how long? When does this have to go to tender again?
So the 1 year plus 1 renewal year. So after year 2, we would go back to open tender and follow the same process again.
And we could have a cost analysis perhaps at that point to kind of determine maybe what it, was there, it'd be interesting to see, was there a huge savings by doing this at some point? Okay, so we've already kind of talked about this back and forth. Is there any more questions related to this particular recommendation to go with Landmark Construction for $47,000?
No, I'll put the motion on the floor to accept.
Do you second that motion, Councillor McAleer? Yeah, okay. His worship's not here with us right now, so we'll take a vote. We're good to
Yeah,
move this
all
to
in favor.
council? Good, okay, 2-0, thank you. Report D will be the RFQ for the hourly backhoe hire rates. This is an information only from what I can read. Go ahead, Scott, is it?
No, this is not for information. This
Oh, no.
is still this was a public request for quote. So it's a yearly RFQ that goes out looking for hourly backhoe rates for some of the work that we need to do. This year we received 4 bidders, with the low bid of UCC Utilities coming in at $72.50. And so at this time, we're recommending to award this to the low bidder, as again, they're the low cost per hourly rate for this RFQ.
Thank you. It's getting pretty close there, 40 cents. Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, just noticed, anyway, we had quite a talk about the tendering process and lowest bid earlier on, anyway. But, when I look at this UCC utility, 7250, Lee McDonald, 7290, I don't think Lee McDonald is new to having done or whatever business with the city in the past, and like for 40 cents, I guess, you don't make the grade. Is there, I'm just, like with UCC, have they provided this type of service for the city in the past?
Madam Chair, through the councillor, so great question. So this is the first time we've seen UCC bid on this work. And when we get these types of, new contractors in, there's nothing for, as long as they provide all the documentation, which they did, they met those minimum requirements, they identified the equipment they're using and the operating staff for that, and the insurance information. At the end of the day, unless they had a poor performance that was on record with the city, which, there's nothing that we have seen, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can do the work. Is there closer eyes on them? Yes. We want to make sure we're getting, they're achieving our goals out in the field and doing that relatively in an efficient manner. If they're much slower than what we're used to or things like that, those are the things that we will have to work out with that contractor. But at the end of the day, in the spirit of open tendering process like this, it is as long as they meet all the minimum criteria, and there's no outstanding issues that they have with the city, then we have to, follow our tendering processes and again, award to the low bidder. And so that's why we're recommending to award to the low bidder in this case.
Okay. Mitchell, do you have a question? Or, do I have someone to move this to council for a recommendation? Council will still have the final say. We just need to get it there.
So Scott? I'll put the motion on the floor. So again, there's not much of a difference there between Lee McDonald and this other company. And you're confident that they're able to do the work?
Again, I've never seen them do the work, so I do not know. All I can go off of is based on what they put on paper. They've supplied the information of their backhoe. They've supplied the information of their operator. I don't know beyond that. I've never seen them doing backhoe work. They say they have the equipment and the staff and the insurance in place to do that work. So at the end of the day,
If they don't, we can,
If they
there's-
don't,
if
then we
that's in
go-
the agreement, right?
Exactly.
That you
If-
can shut it down?
if anything happens, if they're not available like we need them, we go automatically to the second bidder. So it's one of those things that we have to give them we have to follow our policies and our practices and the law out there. And at the end of the day, they checked all the boxes and they had the low bid. So there's no other distinguishing information that we have that we cannot, from staffing level, we have to make a recommendation to award to them.
Thank you. So Councillor Twill put it on the floor. Do you second this to go to council, Councillor McLear?
Yeah, I can second it to send it up to council.
Okay, so all those in favor to move this to council?
You know, I got a question on this, moving on to council. Are we moving it to approve or are we moving it to reject?
We're moving to approve staff's recommendation to award the tender to QCC.
Scott, just one more question. This UCC, are they a local company?
As far as I know, they're an island company for sure. I can't recall what their mailing or physical address is. I don't recall that.
Councillor McLear?
Yeah, I guess just a comment to Councillor Twill's point or question. I'm seconding to send it up to council. I'm not confident that I would support it at the council level for just the reason I stated, I guess, for a 40-cent difference for a known versus an unknown contractor. I'm having difficulty with that.
The thing with, right now, the way our tender process is, there are no extra points given for people who've done good past work. This is where our procurement, again, it comes back to this bylaw that's so important, because based on how it's written, which is contradictory to our conversation we just had with the lowest document. So this is where I think we're going to have some issues at the council level for sure, that people aren't going to be really sure why for 40 cents we can't go with someone that's always done work for the city. And then now we're saying, okay, it's good in this situation, but it's not good in this situation. So that is where we're kind of messy right now, I believe, based on all the conversation we've had today.
And Madam Chair, if I may just speak so as well, we have to tread lightly, of course, as well. We put it very black and white how we're going to award these RFQs, right? And again, as long as they check all the boxes and they're the low bid, that's how we stipulate in that document. And we have to remember too, just because, and Lee's been around, Lee McDonald, their company has done great work over the past couple of years. Nothing against him at all. We also have to make sure, though, that any newcomer to the business, some individual may say tomorrow they want to buy a backhoe, and that's how small contractors start up, right? They buy a backhoe and a truck. We have to give them a fair opportunity to grow their business as well. That's part of municipal government. And again, we will work with them and monitor them and make sure that they're doing the work that we need to do. And as soon as they stop doing that, or if they do that, then that's when we will step in and have those discussions and look at awarding it to the second bidder, not the low bidder. But at the end of the day, we have to give people the chance to prove themselves. They say on paper that they can do the work, and they're going to do it at a lower cost than everything else. So we have no reason not to recommend to award.
No, that's right. And there can be more discussion later. So this is on the floor. Can I have go ahead.
more
This is your
question.
second question. Yeah.
Excuse me. So Scott, when you make a recommendation to council and you go with the lowest bid, or not necessarily do you go with the lowest bid, knowing that Lee McDonald has been doing business with the city for X number of years, Having said all of that, you're recommending, when I say you, that means your entire department. And I'm sorry if I didn't see this, but was there a rating system in place? Did you look at, I know in Parks and Rec, one of the projects that was recommended to the committee, there was a rating system. So is there a rating system here where you have an exercise, whether it be yourself, someone from finance, maybe another member of your management team, is there a rating system where, say, three members of the rating team would look at the contract, do an individual rating? Was that done in this case?
So I think if I understand correctly, what you're asking, if there's a rating given to an individual or company who's worked for the city before versus someone who's new to the city. And no, we have to tread very lightly on that. Again, you can get, we'll say a $5 million construction project, and you may get a bid from a contractor who has never worked in the city, but has 30 or has been in business 50 years in a neighboring province, right? And they come in low bid. So just because they haven't worked with the city doesn't mean that they wouldn't qualify for the work because they have more than enough experience on it. So again, we have to tread very carefully on how that experience is. So we have to we can look at the experience of an operator. You could say we want someone with maybe, 15, 20 years experience, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. But you have to tread very lightly on experience working with the city in some cases. So again, they're saying that they can do the work, and with what we put out in the tendering process, we said, here's the minimum criteria, and they checked all those boxes, and then we're the low bid. So there's really no rating, it's just, can you check all the boxes, and who's the lowest bid? And at the end of the day, they checked all the boxes and they were the low bid.
Okay, so now you guys moved and seconded. We need to take a vote, whether we're supporting staff's recommendation or not, to get this on to council. So
Yeah, I'll move it on to council.
you're supporting? To nothing. Amber, thank you. Report D is the Royalty Junction Road Change Order. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're well underway on our street resurfacing program. One thing we do we include this typically in our package, is sometimes we'll do ditch repair, shoulder repairs, and those types of things along with the paving. When we had identified Royalty Junction Road to be resurfaced this year as part of Package B, after the winter, we were a little more concerned than we had originally anticipated with what we were seeing out in Royalty Junction Road. So we did some further investigation, especially within regards to the storm water control out there, as well as the existing road bed. With the results we found, we knew we had to increase what we're going to do out there in terms of there's some additional stormwater management work that we need to do out there, as well as placing some additional roadbed material ahead of paving. And this was unfortunately unaccounted for. So we've ran the numbers on doing this additional work, and we're anticipating that's going to cost about $256,665.51 for the additional work. That's taxes in. And so that includes ditching the entire length of the road for the project that we're doing. There is some road culverts there's an existing roadway culvert. We are going to increase that size. And the reason why we have noticed this more, I think it was last fall when we really saw some significant issues out there, late last fall, early winter, some huge stormwater issues causing water to flood over the road. So we want to, while we're out there, we want to fix it up right, so it's going to last for the long term versus just doing a Band-Aid effect. So I have a couple options really and truly here. We could just reduce our scope of work out there, so we could essentially just do the stormwater work this year and then paving next year. But we do have some stormwater money set aside for some projects. We think this is a more priority this year to reallocate some of those funds to do this stormwater work here, so that we can repair the road and resurface it, so that we are completed in 1 year, and hopefully never have to return for a number of years to come. So we're recommending that a transfer of funds from our stormwater management capital account to our street resurfacing account, plus the approval to add this change order to this project, be approved this year.
I think that's what is, what we have to be always mindful of, that things change. Councillor Twill?
Yeah, Scott, as I read your report, I think one of the words that struck me was more comprehensive approach. You indicated the stormwater management. I know some of the emails I sent. I was on that road with a resident that lives in that community, extremely frustrated. His concern was, and I shared his concern, that, we just can't go in and just pave the road. And Joe, we talked about this as well. You just can't go in and pave it and maybe put a bit of gravel. I mean, it's got to be comprehensive in every sense of the word. So I'm all in favor of the expenditure. I think it's got to be done. My question to you is, are we missing anything at all, Scott? I want to do it right the first time, and I want to ensure longevity. So when I say longevity, we're talking a lot of heavy vehicle traffic on that road that goes back and forth. So my first question is there anything being left out? Stormwater management, proper ditch construction, total reconstruction of that road. Is anything being left out?
Madam Chair, to the councillor, so yes, so this is, again, the reshaping all the ditches, right from the top of the hill all the way down to the gully where our limits end, or just past right where our limits end. It's replacing, there's a large culvert under the road in the gully that we're replacing as well, so that we can handle more flow, and I guess we're twinning it, right? Yeah, we're twinning the pipe underneath the road there so that we have double the capacity. We'll be replacing the few driveway culverts that are along the way. So from a stormwater management perspective, it's going to significantly improve along there for sure. And then again, we're also strengthening the road bed ahead of asphalt as well. We're a little concerned, so that's why we're adding an additional 6 inches of reclaimed asphalt ahead of paving to strengthen that. So we're quite confident after we visited out there that this will fix that problem once and for all, so that road will last a long time.
Okay. My second question is, Scott.
Okay, your second question, go ahead.
Yeah, my second question is, if you look at that entire road, part of it's owned by the city, the other part is owned by the province. Was there any thought, I thought, in some of the correspondence you talked about maybe working with the province to parallel the efforts from Brackley Point Road all the ways to the Malpeck Road? Any discussions have taken place with the province to see what can be done to, redouble the efforts to ensure that there's consistency through that entire road? And I believe we own right up to the Rails of Trails, and then it ends there. But in a unique situation like this, was there any dialogue with the provincial government, Transportation and Public Works, to see what could be done to, again, have consistency on that road and have all that comprehensive approach that you referred to in your report?
Madam Chair, to the councillor. So yes, I've had a few discussions over the past year with the Director of Maintenance for Highways. They intend to repair their section as well. The original thought was they were going to piggyback on us, and because we had tendered the work for the road, and we're going to take advantage of our pricing to finish their section. However, just financially, as of right now, the province hasn't approved any funding to do the work. So right now, the last direction that they've given me, we're going to continue ahead with our work. And as the weeks go on, they're still looking to see if they could afford to do their section this year. And I was told, the last discussion I had was, I was told if they do get the funding, then they'll just tender the work themselves. So they have it on their radar to repair as well. They had intentions to doing it with us, but unfortunately the funding just wasn't there for their maintenance team. But they're continuing to look to see if they can get those funds to do the remaining portion of Royalty Junction Road.
I'll have to do that. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, so just, thank you, Chair McCabe, and to the manager, or maybe the chair knows, the M&M Resources, the quote here totaling 256, was that the result of a tender process, or was that even necessary?
Madam Chair, through to the councillor. So that was a quote outside of the tendering process. So when, just like any other work that they're already the contractor out there. So if they're already the contractor out there, we will ask them for a quote for do this. But again, that's why we're here to council, get approval to spend the money. But typically in the past, if the price seems reasonable for the amount of work, which it really does, we were quite happy with the pricing for the amount of work that they need to do out there. And the materials that they need to supply to be able to do the work, then that's why we're here to council to get the approval to add these funds to that purchase order so that we can carry on with this change order.
Well, it's obvious by the pictures that the work needs to be done, so are we willing to move this? Do you have a question?
Yeah. Madam Chair, again, if I ever called Joey McKinnon, it was just to say hi, he's doing a great job, but I have spoken about this road for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's in dire need. But Scott, through the chair to our chief engineer, when you go to our procurement policy, the 2-pager, it says for purchases where the total cost is in excess of $25,000, public tenders shall be called. So just to follow up, I didn't get a clear answer. Did you tender it?
Madam Chair, through His Worship, so no, it wasn't tendered. Again, when the contractor has already been awarded work in the area, so they're doing the roadway and work, this work needs to happen in tandem with the work that's already been awarded. Okay. So typically we don't tender that work. We ask for a quote. If the quote is unreasonable, or we believe it's unreasonable, then we can go back to the drawing board, and maybe it's, we don't do this road this year and wait to next year and tender the whole thing out in just one package. But we felt the price was very reasonable for the sheer volume of work. It is a long stretch of road, as you're well aware. I think it's 1.3 or 1.4 kilometers. So there's a lot of ditching work to be done, a lot of material to be brought in and laid ahead of paving. So we, based on unit prices that we saw in this tender for the volume work, we were satisfied with the price and believe it's reasonable for the work to ensure that this work continues on. If we were to tender this out, likely we wouldn't be able to meet deadlines for this year. I'm not sure if we would. It'd be pretty challenging to get all this work designed and tendered in time to get it awarded this year. I'm not sure I could do it.
So when a tender's awarded and additional ask is coming in, you're able to go to the people that have been awarded the tender if the price is reasonable?
Just now, remember the BDO report?
Yeah.
2018, they added onto the paving tender. Councillor Tweedle was there.
Yeah.
They added onto it. BDO took that and said, no, that should have been tendered. I'm just doing this for clarification to the chief engineer. Look, anything we want to avoid is the tendering process is pretty loosey-goosey when you look at a two-page document, but I'm just saying it's right here under section, I like to always point out the sections, subsection 2.4, and it's C, 2.4C. Scott, look, I understand where you're coming from, and I know it could delay the project, but just past experience has shown us, let's be prudent, let's be careful how we proceed. So I just want to make sure all the bases have been touched, have been Ts crossed, Is dotted. And the reason I ask that, Madam Chair, this road needs to be done, and I think.
Can you have a fast tender, though, Your Worship, and then you have your deadline date that it needs to be done this year? So how many people are actually going to be able to come in and do this work anyway? Like, I get what you're saying, and I want to follow the right
Oh, yeah.
processes too.
Yeah.
But if it's an emergency road situation, which,
Yes, so was the 2018 tender. It was before election. It was an emergency situation, so they had to get the pavement done. All I'm asking, Scott, is that there's a major water course that runs through there that causes a lot of issues. Probably the best part of that road is the railway bed, because railway beds are always built to a higher standard than anything else in the country. So we're all right to go. I'm fully supportive of. And the other point here, Madam Chair, that's very important, 470 Malpac Road, where that new 84-unit modular housing project is going, the rapid housing project. It will tie into that too. It'll open up this land for more development, because there's lots of land to be developed out there, which means more tax base.
I
more
think
money-
we also
more
want to
money for
get
public works.
clarification, Scott, to make sure that everything's on the uppity up,
So we are. So
Okay.
this is not out of the ordinary,
Okay.
and Richard McEwen, one of our other directors here, can attest, in construction, change orders pop up all the time.
Okay.
And it impacts the existing work. It's one thing if it's outside the zone of work and completely separate from what is being worked on, but this is a standard change order.
Just an
It
addition.
is a very typical construction
Okay.
mechanism to do work that was unforeseen at the time of tendering. And Eleanor, our CAO, may correct me if I'm wrong, but going back to the BDO report, my understanding was the issue was not that we added additional paving, because we do, in our tender documents, we say we may add, delete, or subtract, whatever that is, those are in there, to
Yes.
these tender. I think the issue was, it should have came back to council to
final
increase the
approval.
purchase order, to get approval to spend those money.
Yeah.
So I think that was the issue. It was the approval to spend the money was the issue, not that we added more paving to that year.
And it's, you just said, senior management or director of community services gave it the stamp of approval, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, we're going to ask to move this on to council. Could someone move it? I'll move it. Okay, second by Councillor Twill. Everybody's in favor. Thank you. All right, now we have another request to look for additional funding for the street resurfacing program for the 2024 construction season. We had two notice of motions come to council. One was to reevaluate Councillor Duran's streets, and I know you're working with response for him, Scott, around looking at certain streets were being triggered, but knowing that there's going to be work around sidewalks and different infrastructure, they're kind of delayed for 1 year on that. Councillor Tweels also asked, and you weren't ready today to come, but with this increase of funding, what will happen if we get this through council and approved, then they will trigger back to the data where we know and look at what streets would be next on the list to proceed. So basically, I know in our budget process, we were pretty lowball when we already wanted to be able to commit to kind of staying ahead. We're working on those red zones that we saw in that initial data presentation, but by adding some more money, we might be able to get into some of the yellow zones to maintain further damage from what we just finished talking about on Winslow Road, where they get in pretty despair shape. So, I mean, it's pretty simple. Are we wanting to put a motion to council to increase our budget for
Yeah, I'll move
It's it needs to happen fast. There's a timeline where if any work's going to be done, we have to get this out.
And Madam Chair, if I just
Go
may
ahead.
add, one
Sorry.
thing too, we also need to keep in mind too. if this gets approved, we're going to look at our list, where we're at with streets that have been rated. One thing we have to keep in mind are going to be some streets, especially in the older part of Charlottetown, that will require additional infrastructure repairs. So there may be a street, and I'm just going to pick on Councillor Twill because his area 4, I know there will be a few streets that get triggered on that list. One thing our staff and water and sewer staff will do is look at that road and say, okay, what's on that road that needs to be repaired or replaced before we go and pave? Because we don't want to pave a road and then say, oh, I got a catch basin repair or I got sidewalk to repair, right? So that is one process that has to happen before. And so a road may be delayed until next year. It triggers this year. It should be paved, but it gets delayed because of we have the full sidewalk needs to be replaced, or there's 4 catch basins that need to replace, or water and sewer has to replace a valve underground.
But if that stuff's communicated,
Correct, yep,
then the counselor can then communicate
yep.
the correct information. So I
Totally.
think that's it, right?
Yep.
People just need to know what is the plan, when will that happen? This is the reason why it's not happening right now.
Yeah.
But moving forward, here's where
Absolutely.
we hope to go. And that's where
And-
Councillor Duran, if he could get that information shared,
Yep.
then he'll be able to share that
And
information.
that's what we plan to do. If this moves forward, we will create that list showing where we're at, but showing what had to get pushed towards next year so that we can develop a plan. And just kind of going back, that's why we rate our streets in the fall, is
Yeah.
so that we can take the winter months to plan and budget for this stuff. So come spring, we're hitting the ground running and we're replacing sidewalks
Ready
and
to go.
fixing catch basins.
Okay?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just quickly. It's under your leadership that we're increasing this budget. This is the second year. We increased it last year. We increased it by $1 million, correct? And this year, so Scott, just to clarify, I want to get a clarification here. So in the minutes from May 14th, street resurfacing package 2324 was $1,998,000. Then on May 28th, we had street resurfacing package A, Island Construction, 1.6, package B, M&M Resources, 1.6, 1.5. So that one back in May 14th for $1,098,000. That was package C. You're saying this is package C. That's what I got from the minutes. Was there? Okay.
I'd have to go back and confirm that. I'm not sure of the numbers, but I think one of the things we need to keep in mind, even though we budget for $4 million, or just shy of $4 million for our capital budget this year, out of those funds, we also have to incur the cost of testing. So we have a contract or a consultant that we hire yearly, that I think their fees end up being around $70,000, give or take, a year. And then we also have to do street line painting. So those roads get milled up and new asphalt, well, we got to pay to go back and replace all those lines. So those two things come off the top of that $4 million as well. So that's also something. So you may see a difference. You may think, oh, there's $200 or $300 still in that account. Well, no, it's already accounted for in another area.
No, what I'm asking, Scott. What I'm asking is that this amounts to that 3.9 million there with the testing and so forth that you just talked about. I'm asking that this package D, or whatever you want to call it, would be in the same area of 1.6, 1.5 million.
Madam Chair, through your worship. So no, we're just saying an extra $1 million. So it'd be in the range of probably $900,000 to $1 million is what we would target to resurface. So it would be no more than $1 million inclusive of testing and line painting.
But I'm asking, make it package D and take the same number of streets that you took for A, B, C, because you had to take a number, right, to put it out to tender. This, if it's $1 million, it's going to be less number of streets. I'm just saying, make it similar to A, B, C, D in terms of what we're going to go out to tender, and that comes back to council.
Are
Because
we
you're
going to
taking.
be able to get that work done, though? Is that amount of work going to be able to be done?
Oh, yeah, they can do it. And you know what? I only say that because there is work out there to be done, but the private work is not as active as it was in previous years. So there's public work that can be done. But I'm just saying, this could address some of these notice of motions, and I respect, Scott, the process that's in place. Who does the evaluation? Is it you, do you do the evaluation of the streets?
Someone's got too many mics
Mic
on.
off.
Madam Chair, through your worship. So no, we have staff that do that reevaluation. Same staff have done it for the past number of years, so to keep that consistency. So no, it's not me. It is other staff that have been doing it for some time. The other thing too, so we kind of work backwards from our budget. So if council approves $4 million, then we take off the top our testing and line painting estimates, and then we work backwards from that. So we will look to our list, and we can estimate based on, our experience and what we saw in cost the previous year. We'll say, okay, we have, one street is 1 kilometer, so we know how much 1 kilometer is going to cost based on the width of that street. And so then we give a price tag to each street on that rating system, and then we go down and add them all up until we get to that $4 million mark. So if you say, council says, okay, we have $1 million approved, then we work backwards and say, okay, we'll go down to our list. We know, we have a rough estimate how much each street's gonna cost to repair. So we would just go down that street, and might be only 10 streets, but that's what we would add to a list to get to that, where we anticipate being around $1 million.
I think that, yeah, and I think we'll be lucky to get another million approved based on how tight we were at budget time anyway. So are we moving this on?
Put it on the floor.
Seconded? All those in
That
favor?
motion's on the floor. Just want to say that you get I'm looking at a similar package to A, B, C, and as the chair said, who's been leading this right over the last couple of years, it's a capital budget. I don't think we'll spend the whole 55 million, because we never spent 100% of our capital budget that we can transfer something in or add something to, and I would prefer to add it to this. So just keep that in mind, Scott. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's on the floor. All those in favor to move this to council? Okay. The last thing on our agenda today was just included the minutes from the Civic Board for Persons with Disabilities. This board is a board through the mayor's office, which is wonderful.
And approved by council.
And approved by council. But I look at these, and I'd like to have more discussion around how these boards report. It's great, but a lot of the stuff that was discussed and included in this committee was through Parks and Rec. But I would like to finalize those terms of reference a little bit and get those back so we can have a little focus for them. I know that they're looking for a little direction from us. So just include it. That would be for information that'll go in the package.
And we do have a terms of reference for this
I
committee.
think we need to look at
Updated.
them a little bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're pretty broad.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we'll do that at some future meeting, or we can talk about that through the mayor's office. Okay, so any notices or introductions of stuff that we'd like talked about next meeting?
Just, again, this is an email that came from some residents in the outside of the downtown area, asking about places of just comfort, relaxation when they're walking in Sherwood, Parkdale. We have to look at our benches, what kind of facilities we have, whether it's public fountains throughout the city. We tend to look always in the downtown, but again, through the chair, I know you've addressed it in an email to one of the constituents in the Sherwood area, but I think this is a whole city issue. Like if I walk out McCrae Drive, up to East Royalty Road, and then back around to St. Peter's Road, there's not one bench there. If there's one bench there, we should have more. That's just one area. Many areas around the city of Charlottetown, that require some places of rest and relaxation. And that could be a water fountain, could be a bench, could be something that provides just a bit of a repose on a walkout on a beautiful evening. So just wanted to give you put that on as a notice of motion, just as something to deal with.
Were you walking or on a replay?
Go ahead, Scott.
And Madam Chair, if I can just speak to that quickly. So one thing, we are aware that those concerns come in. So one thing we are doing right away, so that we have a map for further discussion, is we have our staff going out and they'll be mapping where all the benches are in the city. Whether we're working with Parks and Rec as well to have all their maps all their benches on one big map, so we can print it out and show, okay, here's where our other benches are. So we can show how many benches we really have, and talk about the challenges that we have with those benches existing, and then
Yeah.
talk about the challenges with adding additional benches. and-
Certainly worth a
and those
future
costs.
agenda item to
Yeah,
discuss.
correct.
Absolutely, so it'd be good to see
But we are
that.
working towards something in the future for a future discussion.
Just before we end on that note, I brought up 2 or 3 months ago about the request from a resident from Sherwood to have a bench placed on Maple Avenue.
She's already got it, Counselor Twill, she's got it. The bench has been placed in front of Cody Bank, the Community Center Hall.
Yeah, in front of the community center or Cody Banks Arena?
No, where Counselor Duran requested it go, right by the Maplewood Room, or the Sherwood Hall, yeah.
So the bench is
Yeah.
there. So why did it take so long to get the bench?
Because it's not, right now, it's not somewhere that they actually place benches. Their focus has been in the downtown core, where people are, where businesses are, and this is what His Worship just indicated. We will have a future discussion. Yep.
Well,
So that will, and it will happen at a future discussion. We're not going to talk about it today, but it is going to be something we're going to talk about in a future meeting. Okay, so now I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, everybody, have a great day.